La Côte d'Ivoire getting to the final of the 2023 AFCON. When they hosted back in 1984, it didn't really go well for them in that competition. Many years on, about 40 or so years on, they host and make the final. They host and make the final. I cannot remember the last time a team hosted and got to the final. I think Egypt 2006. Yeah. Apart from that, host nations don't do well. Ghana did not reach its own final. Angola. Neither did Equatorial Guinea and Gabon. Neither did South Africa. Neither did Gabon. Neither did Tunisia. Now Egypt.
Yes.
And then you had the last one in Cameroon. They finished semis and So yeah, they are here. Kwame, let me start off with it's a crazy ride.
Yeah.
At a point, it did not look like they would be here, but 6 games after the opening game, they are here in the final.
I think they need a lot more commendation after all that they went through. Expectations were high, actually. People really felt that, okay, host nation is the Ivory Coast. It's a huge footballing nation in the world and also in Africa. Won the African Cup of Nations twice. There was a whole
four finals,
1-2. So there was a whole generation. They were coming back of a generation that was known as the golden generation, the DR Congo's, and who couldn't win it until that hybrid of just a few remnants of that generation and a mix of some other people won it in 2015 for them. So coming into the competition once more, they felt that okay. This is our time. We are hosting this competition in our home soil. They've gone through all sorts of emotions, from winning the first game to losing the second game against Nigeria, and also losing disgracefully to Equatorial Guinea in that game on home soil. And they had to wait till that Morocco game to seal their qualification to the next stage of the competition. So they've gone through it. If you look at the emotional roller coaster that these Ivorians have gone through, you'd really expect that it means a lot to them getting to the final. And it's like I said in my initial thought, it's every organizer's dream that the host nation gets into the final. Going into the game yesterday, aside the first game they played against Guinea-Bissau, this is the second most comfortable performance that I've seen of the Ivorians. Yes. All the other, even this one, the first 15 minutes, they had to. They seem not to be good starters in games, and they are a team that seems to grow in games. From the Senegal game to the game against Mali, I felt it was more of a country trying to show a lot more fight than it's been a lot more tactical. This time around, you could see that they wanted to be a lot more tactical. Yes, have the fight and other things in them, but the coach was playing to a particular part and made very good use of his midfield this time around. And I don't know if you've noticed, ever since Faé took over, Sangare hasn't been a mainstay.
Yes.
It's been more of Jean-Michel Seri. He's prioritizing a lot more experience and having a player who has that nous, that awareness and understands the role very well. And anytime that the Ivory Coast have been on top or have dominated, it has been Seri being the person orchestrated. And that was a monstrous performance from Frank Kessie yesterday.
Yeah.
He was everywhere. And Seko Fofana. So it looks like that midfield balance that they've been looking for, they are achieving it that now with Fofana, with Kessie, and then Seri. So it's a mix of experience, a mix of technicality, a mix of grit, like everything you need in that midfield, you would get it in there. And I'm not so surprised that they were able to, at some point pin the Congolese in their own half. Didn't give them a lot more opportunity to be able to, come into the game as they would expect. So I wasn't so surprised that the way the Ivorians played yesterday. It was a more comfortable performance. Halle should have gotten a hat-trick in that game. Looking at the chances that came his way, that cross from Singo in the first half where he missed that by inches, and also had another opportunity after he had scored the goal to even double the tally. He had a lot more chances in the game yesterday. But one key commendation I would give to the Ivorians have been their fullbacks. It was when Singo came in for surgery right after the first half of that game, because Uriel was on a yellow card, the coach didn't want to risk it and brought in Singo. He's been amazing. And for me, one of the best left back I've seen in the tournament has been Conan.
Yeah.
He's been amazing.
Really
efficient. He's everywhere. His energy levels are always high. And he's one of the players that typifies that fight that you see in the Ivorian team. Almost everywhere, pacing around the flanks, and also doing very well in tracking back, getting in there, sending in crosses. He's been amazing for the Ivorians, and I think they've showed a lot more quality in this game against the Congolese. We would be expecting to see a lot more of that in the final, where it won't just be an emotional game, it will be a lot more tactical from the coach. Emerse Faé will be looking forward to that.
Safo, your thoughts on Côte d'Ivoire? They went past the Congolese by a goal to nil. They are in the final, and it did not look like they were going to get here, but they are in the final.
So an interesting thing about that game is this was the first time they were back in Abidjan after being defeated by Equatorial Guinea. They went to, I think, Yamoussoukro to play Senegal, and then went to Bouaké to face Mali. And you would think that it will get to them because the Abidjan crowd are more expectant. They are like the Accra of Côte d'Ivoire. They are more expectant. They will go to the stadium, they will cheer you on, but they get easily pissed off when you are not performing well and all of that. And the question was whether they were going to be able to overcome this performance whereby everything is going for them, but nothing seems to be working. Because in the first half, I was getting the vibe of, and Congo were set up to play the same way as Equatorial Guinea played. Not really attacking, trying to hit you on the break, leaving the ball for the Ivorians. They had chances, they were hitting the woodwork, they had opportunities, and it was not working for them. So I almost tweeted out that I hope this is not a repetition of what happened against Equatorial Guinea, because the truth of the matter is, if they were not finding the back of the net as the game wore on in the dying embers, the Congolese would have had more belief. And talking about Conan, there was one situation whereby Congo were through on. It was, I think it was 2 against 3 or 2 against 1, something of that sort. And the awareness and wherewithal of the fullback to come back and then salvage the whole situation and make a potential expected goal or dangerous situation a lot calmer is something which is very commendable. They don't show you that in the highlights. They don't put that in the statistics, but that's like the eye test. And it shows you how putting players in positions, putting players who are willing, putting players who have the drive and desire can get you results. Another player I would like to mention who didn't even feature in today's game was Diakite. He was not really a starter. Put in a good shift against Senegal, came off the bench against Mali to even get the winning goal, and because of that couldn't even feature because he did something silly and took off his shirt. But what such a player gives you is the drive and the momentum to bring you this far. And truth of the matter is, the moment they beat Senegal, I said they were going to get to that. As a matter of fact, I predicted they are going to win it, because it's just that belief that gives you to beat. Because truth is, take Morocco aside, and even Morocco were not really that convincing throughout this tournament. Senegal was very convincing. If Ivory Coast had not taken them out, we'd probably be having a Nigeria-Senegal final, because there is nobody I don't think Senegal couldn't have beaten in this tournament. But for them to have that mentality to go this far, another effective thing is players who were injured and they still believed that they could get this far to get them started. Sebastien Haller, when we were in Côte d'Ivoire, was someone the Ivorian population were very expectant of to come to the team's aid. But because of injuries, they were not getting him to perform and all of that. And the trust and the way they were able to manage his minutes, same with Simon and Dingra, they all had knocks. But the way they were able to manage their minutes, and you could see that in yesterday's game, why the Ivorian population were very expectant of these players, because whenever they come in, they put in a very good shift. And I think things seem to be working for the Ivorians. You have a coach who understands what he wants to do, how he wants to play, how he wants his team to be shaped up. And this is a coach, when he was coming in, you see, Nigeria and Ivory Coast have a very similar pattern. Both didn't trust in their coach, but Ivorians own are more messier, in the sense that this guy, we don't even have any belief in him. He didn't even achieve anything when he was a player. What can he do? I remember my Ivorian friends say, oh, Isha. But when and that's the tournament football. That's when the tournament football comes in, because it's a limited amount of game. It's about how you get players to play in a certain way you want, and I would expect that final to be even tastier and not going to be as easy as Nigeria had it in the first encounter, because the Ivorian team are different. Like Frankesse called them, they are zombies. They are dead. So there's nothing they can do that will shake them up. And it was a brilliant performance yesterday. They had it very comfortable.
You are talking about the Congolese, and I think I'll start with you and come to you. Kwame. You're talking about the Congolese. You said they did not show up yesterday. What was wrong with them in your estimation?
I think sometimes we underestimate the euphoria in the 12th supporter. And sometimes psychologically, this is not to sound disrespectful, but psychologically, I think certain teams are okay to get where they are. I think the ambition was not there. I think the Ivorian midfield, because their game plan was so predictable. It was about how to, and that's why we spoke on Tuesday whether they would start Silas, because I feel like that's the game that they needed to start Silas, because against Guinea, he was the guy making the runs behind the Guinean backline when they were on the counter. But things didn't even see, even the clearest chance they got was even offside. And even that one, they failed to bury that chance. So the Ivorians, it's just everything coming together for the Ivorians. The supporters, the moment getting to them, tactics just not working. They just didn't show up. They didn't give the Ivorians a lot of opportunity. I think their XG, we will not even get one. They barely had a clear expected goal in that game. So I think tactically, the Ivorians had figured them out. And I think Ivory Coast being in that position where you've had a team who killed you on the counter, I think, like I was saying, we'll get to the South African game and people learning lessons from previous games. I think the Ivorians had learned their lessons from previous games about having control and preventing the opposition from using that control against you to weaken you. I think they learned from that. And tactically yesterday, they limited the Congolese as much as possible. And I'll ask a question: if the Congolese possess certain type of players, certain physical type of players who could really cause havoc, do not stop running for the 90 minutes, maybe the story could have been different. And I keep on thinking of someone like an Osimhen, who, even though nothing is going for them, he's still persistent and a pest and a parasite to that backline. I don't think they didn't possess any player of that quality yesterday who could really trouble the backline of Ivory Coast.
The occasion mattered. It was a huge crowd. I think that's the biggest stadium in the country now, so the crowd was huge. That's one. But if you look at the Congolese, that's how they've been playing almost throughout the tournament, making very good use of Johan Wissa and then Meshach earlier. Sitting back, trying very hard to hit you on the counter and all of that. So I wasn't so surprised looking at them. At some point, I commented during the game that on paper, the Nigerians look a lot better than the two teams that we are watching now. If on the balance of things, because the Congolese won a game in regulation time in the last game they played. They don't look like a team that forces out a win. I mean, they play up to a certain level and they get very comfortable and they get stuck. But this was crunch time. This was a game that you'd expect them to, you would have expected them to, go in there, give of their best, and this was the final on the table for you, and they found a way not to show up in this game. I mean, the occasion mattered, but this is how Congo has played throughout the tournament.
So you feel that they couldn't raise it to another level?
Exactly. At this point, you need to push up until a certain point. Okay, this is the final on the table. Let's go a step further. But they kept playing the same game that we've been seeing them play.
And what would you put down to a lack of quality, variety? You mentioned the occasion. What do you think was going on?
It's just that mental strength or that mentality of let's push ourselves to the next level. Yes, everything is going against us, but they kept playing the same game throughout. There wasn't a point where they accelerated in the game. They had to inject some momentum. It was just the same Congo. And watching the game, I said all Ivory Coast needed to do was get that goal, and it was done. And that was it.
So
because
you
after
felt
the first,
one goal was going to
and
make
that
the
was it. And you see, there is one thing about the Ivorians many people are not noticing. Is their goalkeeper. He looks to me like a Fiero.
Yeah,
like
shaky. He's
he's
very
not
shaky.
confident
Very
enough.
shaky.
I saw that in the Equatorial Guinea game.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a ball that he punched directly to
the
the Equatorial Guineans to just have a go at them. See that first 15 minutes, how he was handling his box in that corner situation, where he fluffed the ball. I mean, I think his host nation advantage, any referee would have given. Oh, that's true.
Really?
Any referee would have.
No, I disagree. I feel like he
caught for a foul.
Yeah, he caught the ball.
But like I felt
shaky
that,
enough to give them confidence to do that.
Go to the Premier League. This ball would have been given us without any recourse to anything. But I mean, he lacks a bit more confidence. He seemed to be growing into the national team bit by bit. So he will be key in that. But
just to put things into context, Fofana just switched nationality not too long ago. I think about
6 months.
Not too long ago. Very, very recent. So this is very new.
The
very
atmosphere.
New to him. This playing in Africa in front of a crowd, host nation. He was France's under 21 goalkeeper. So this is very new.
It's understandable. It's understandable. And the occasion has been huge. And he's handled himself well, but when you observe carefully, you see
this is something the Nigerians can pick on.
I won't be surprised they've taken note of it.
So just finally, as for the Ivorians, they've made it. I just want us to wrap up on the Congolese, and then we'll get to Edwin on the touch. There's a question I keep asking everybody this week, and I'll ask Safi, and I'll come back to you, Kwame. You are the Congolese. You've played this game. You wake up this morning. How do you think they will be feeling? Will they look at it with regret, or they'll say, "Look, we are here. Semis, we'll take it. Fight for a third place."
I think in any team, irrespective of their performance, would think that we should have done better. We could have done better, but we have a third place match to play. Even the same for the South Africans. Back home, they are saying, "Oh, the boys did well." I mean, Congo. When was the last time Congo got to this place?
It's in 2015.
So I think
2015.
Yeah, I think so.
Congo are not habitual visitors of the semi-finals. I feel like what they would have left for them is play the third place and give a good account of themselves. They remind me of Mali. I remember there was a point, Ghana used to play Mali in a lot of third, fourth place because Mali would always show up. And Ghana would just be like, we didn't get to the final, so you can do whatever. I feel like they would be disappointed. But looking at the way the game panned out, it's not a moment where they'll be banging their heads against the wall that we could have done this, If anybody, South Africa should be the ones feeling that because they were very close yet too far. That would rather hurt, that would give you nightmares as compared to when you barely showed up. You barely had OMG moments or anything like that. So I think they would be disappointed.
So you feel like fairly satisfied?
Yeah, but there will be that disappointment. There's always room for improvement. There was always room for them to do better. But I don't think they would go with banging their heads on the wall or people crying, like how you had Lamine Camara crying, because those are people who came very close and knew where their ceiling was. So I think that's how the Congolese will feel.
Anytime you get to a semi-final, it's another step. Just some 2 games away to the trophy. So if you fail to capitalize on the moment, it's definitely a huge loss for you. They should have taken their chances. Unfortunately, they didn't. They will be hugely disappointed.
Based on the observation you made, that you just felt they kind of played within themselves.
Yeah, and that's very disappointing. I mean, they have quality. We've mentioned the quality here a lot more times. They have experience, and they had a very good coach on the bench. So you would have expected that, when you are in the semi-final of any competition, there is no guarantee that the next competition you are going to hit. It's an opportunity to push yourself to the level to get it. So I feel they'll be very, very disappointed not getting themselves into the final. It's a missed opportunity for me.
All right, we'll see how the Congolese will fare. Their coach, Sebastien Desailly, he's been on the continent for a while, so I'm sure the suitors will come calling, and all of that. Talking about suitors, just on a side note, the reports are that Gambia's coach, Tom Saintfiet, who I think has what it takes to coach the Black Stars. I hear he's putting his application. I hear the FA also talking to the
Amin Abdul.
Amin Abdul, formerly of Comoros. He's still with Comoros, right?
No, Madagascar.
He's Mauritania now. So
Sorry.
we'll see. All kinds of names. I heard over whatever number of coaches had. We hear that story
all the time.
We beg them. It's okay. They should take their time.
They should take their time.
You see,
I know that.
just to comment a bit on that, with Tom Saintfield, I heard this is not his first time applying for this job, and the kind of football he plays is something I think we are not seeing in our Black Stars for quite some time. I think he's more attacking. He's able to work with younger players, and I feel like that's what we have right now in our core.
He just knows how to
But you
build
see,
teams.
one thing I've learned too about these things is I will not overly comment on coaches coming in, because sometimes the coach is coming in, you like this coach, he has a good CV, he's supposed, and he comes to Ghana, I don't know, things fall apart and interference, I'm not interfering, someone is reciting the Quran, everything is...
The only, and I'm saying this, the only successful expert we've had in a while is Avram Grant.
Yes.
And
Avram
his
Grant.
first crack at the AFCON 2015. And it worked for him.
Brilliant.
It was in 2017 that now, because he had been a while, the familiarity developed and he had all kinds of problems. But I think largely he did well. He understood his team, shaped the team well, and boom, we're in an AFCON final months after he